beautiful soul, welcome to my channel. My name is Joanna. This is going to be a transmission about the power of aligning our energies. But before we do that, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your patronage. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I hope that what you get from this transmission is some valuable information. My intention is always to help you embody the best version of yourself, to help you live to your potential. And more specifically, it's to help you face and overcome your fear, because it is fear that is always standing in the way of us becoming our fullest potential. So if you are brave enough to face your fear so that you can experience the other side of fear, which is freedom, then I hope this information is going to serve you. If you would be so kind and click the notification button, subscribe, share it with a friend or two. I believe that the more people have access to this information, the more people will choose or decide to face their own fears. And the more people do that, the more we will have, the more we will live in a society that is not as fear-based as it has been thus far. So thank you again. For those of you who are returning, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your comments. They always let me know that I'm doing exactly what I'm here to do, which is sharing information. Some of you have asked if I could channel on specific topics, and I actually just realized today is that that's not really how I work. I mean, I could, I guess. Whenever I tune in and get ready for channeling, I always defer to my team to let me know what it is that we need to hear the most. So if you are hearing this, and if this information feels right to you, then what this is saying is that this is exactly what you hear, what you need to hear right now. What you do with it is up to you. What you don't do with it was up to you. I always say, don't take every word that I say that comes out of my mouth as gospel. Make your own choices and decisions. Make wise choices and decisions. And information is just that. It's just information. It's just different levels of perception, different ways of perceiving things. The only time it'll make a difference in your life and in my life is if we apply this information into practice every day. And my hope is always to give you the type of information that would allow you to put things into practice so that you can actually see the results, the positive results of the information that you are receiving. But nothing happens on its own. You make your life happen. So whatever you choose to do with this information is up to you. But for what I'm seeing in your comments is that this information is becoming very helpful to you. So that is all I ever want to hear, is that this information is helping you. Today's session is about the power of aligning our energy. What does that mean? Think of it this way. When something is out of alignment in your body, leg, for example, if your leg is out of alignment, if your hip is out of alignment, you're going to experience quite often a quite discernible discomfort. In other words, when we are out of alignment, we are at discomfort. And that's because discomfort is created by resistance. So when we are when we are not in alignment, we are also in some sort of resistance. Resistance is often painful. It can be challenging and difficult. The type of resistance that I'm talking about is a psychological resistance, where this resistance often stems from a space of fear. So as long as we are holding on to fears, and a lot of them, we will experience a lot of resistance. And what aligning does, what realigning does, or the power of realigning our energies, what it does, it helps us get back to our true selves. It helps us to realign to our potential. And what stops us from embodying our potential, it's nothing more and nothing less than fear. So the more we face our fear, the more we are in a position to realize our potential, our goals, and whatever it is that we want to experience for ourselves. On the other hand, the opposite is true. The more we hold on to fear, the more that fear will prevent us from experiencing our fullest potential. It's that simple. And if you ever have felt out of alignment, but then you felt alignment, you know the difference. You know how it feels. However, some people, I would say many, don't even know that they are out of alignment. They just feel off. Now, just because you feel off doesn't mean that you're somehow not on your path. But if you feel off, then something is out of balance, something is out of alignment. And as humanity, we are, apparently by choice, collectively, choosing to be more in alignment with our true selves. Why is that important? Because when we are in alignment with our true selves, we all of a sudden embody our power to the fullest extent. And I have not met a person yet in my life, especially with clients, working with clients for over 20 years. I have never heard a client say, Joanna, I want to be more in my disalignment. Never happens. The general idea is, hey, Joanna, I want to feel good in a roundabout way, right? So what this is saying is that when we are not in alignment, we often don't feel good. When we are not in alignment with our true nature, we don't feel good about ourselves. So some people have been feeling not good about themselves for so long that it becomes the norm and they don't even realize that they are out of alignment. So how can someone work on alignment if they don't even know what is out of alignment? That's a really good question. When you experience a lot of resistance, for example, that is, it's a sign that you are out of alignment. It's not good, it's not bad. It just means that there is some form of you're not in alignment. And again, resistance is good. When you lift weights, resistance is good. You build muscle, you get strong. It's all good. Sorry, something just. But too much resistance is painful, and what we want is we want to resist less, and we want to be more in our alignment with our true selves. Because when we are in alignment with our true selves, we know why we're here. When I am in alignment with my true self, I know exactly why I'm here. I'm here to do what I do, and it just flows naturally. However, I experience a lot of resistance to what I do. And I don't know why I feel the need to say this to somebody. Even though what I do is amazing, I've talked about it many times, it is the greatest job in the world, channeling information, but I also experience a lot of resistance to channeling this information. Now, you might want to ask me, well, what, Joanna, why are you experiencing resistance? It's a really good question. What's coming up for me, the resistance has something to do with the fear of being attacked for what I say. So when there is a fear of being attacked for what I say, I will naturally hold myself back. So when I hold myself back, I'm not in full alignment. So I have to look at this fear that comes from some other lifetime, perhaps. There's also some roots in this lifetime, and I have to effectively deal with this fear, deal with the story. Because as long as I hold on to that story, that in some part of my psyche, I believe that when I speak this out, I'm going to be attacked, and it's very unconscious, then I'm just going to hold myself back, which means I will not be at my fullest potential. And I don't want that, because when I'm not at my fullest potential, when I'm not aligned with what I do, when there is no ease and flow, I struggle. And I don't want to struggle. I don't want you to struggle. So a big part of my job, if you can call it that way, is to help you struggle less. Now, if you think for a moment, you woke up tomorrow and all of a sudden you had a lot less struggle in your life. You wouldn't be struggling on whatever level. How good do you think that might feel? You woke up in the morning, you put on your slippers, you brushed your teeth, you made your coffee, and you look around and you say to yourself, wow, life is good. Can you imagine being in that space? If you can't, then you likely won't have it. On the other hand, if you can, then that means that there is a possibility of that experience being your real experience, but not without some internal work. Because internal work is always required in order to A, realize what is out of alignment, and B, to choose to do something about what we find about not being in alignment. And like I said, it's more often than not, it's about facing my fears. So in a roundabout way, what I'm saying here is I'm here to help you face your fears. You don't have to. You don't need to. It's not required. But I suspect you would rather experience a version of yourself that is less fearful than more fearful. I know I do. I've never met a person who says, hey, I want to fear more. No, you want to fear less. And, okay, they're saying, for example, codependence. Codependence is fear-based. And it will have different reasons for whatever the fear is. But codependence, for example, is fear-based. When someone is too dependent on another, a healthy person, then that says that the person doesn't trust themselves to be independent, well taken care of. The person doesn't trust him or herself, and they feel they need to rely on something from another person to feel good about themselves. That is a tricky proposition because it almost never fails. When we are too dependent on somebody and that somebody moves away or changes, and we have not developed our own confidence in who we are being, then when the person that we depended on moves away or changes, something changes, then we fall back into our fear. So part of this process of me channeling this information is to help you build inner strength. It's not that you don't have it, because it takes a strong individual to be on this planet, but to have greater access to your strengths. You have strengths within you. However, fear is going to prevent you from doing that, because fear will tell you you're not strong, you're not strong. And that's obviously a metaphor. So I said this in my last video, there's nothing greater for me to see when a person realizes that their fear has no power over them. It's when I see that in my sessions, it's mind-blowing, it's eye-opening, and it's equivalent to rebirth. When a person sees themselves from a different perspective and they realize their fear has no power over them, but they've given it power unconsciously. What happens in that moment is a light bulb goes off. And the light bulb goes off basically means the person begins to see clearly. And when a person begins to see clearly, they realize that they have always had the power. They just didn't see it, or they were used to giving power away. So a big part of this channeling is to help you realize how you give your power away to your fear. And fear is always rooted in the past. It's not in the future. When we fear something in the future, it's because we're basing our outcomes on what has been. And as long as we hold on to what has been in a negative way, in a limiting way, then what we are saying is that our fears are always going to always going to be responsible for us creating our future. In other words, we will be creating out of fear. When we create out of fear, we create in very limited ways. And I know that by being a human, that you as a human don't want to be limited. Why? Because you naturally just want to be free. You want to be a freer version of yourself rather than a more limited version of yourself. So I hope whatever information comes to you from these 3 piles is something that you can use in your life so that you can potentially face your own fear, work through your fear. And sometimes it takes, they say sometimes it takes a village to raise a child. In other words, sometimes you may need help. Someone may need to hold your hand as you go through this process. But at the end of the day, when you go through the process of facing your fear, it's not focusing on your fear, it's facing your fear and realizing that fear has no power over you, and realizing that you have given it power unconsciously. Then you can choose to take a power away from your fear. And that's when you become a person that is independent of your fear, if that makes any sense. They're saying to me that most people fear being themselves. I'm asking the question, why? From a very young age, we are told who we should be or shouldn't be to essentially be loved and accepted. When a child comes into this world, the child has no cares. All it wants is to express and be nurtured and just experience. The more a child grows up, the more conditions the child is wrapped in, and the more those conditions limit that child in order to what he or she can be when they grow up. So we all have these limitations. It's just part of being a human. My hope for you, my desire for you is for you to recognize your perceived limitations and then choose to move beyond your limitations if it is what you choose. This is not saying you have to. This is not saying you must or you need to. It's choose. So my work really is to help you choose and help you recognize that there is another choice, or maybe other choices that you were not able to see or perceive because your fears were standing in the way. And how many times do we do things out of fear? We don't even know it because it's so subconsciously driven. That's why my work is specifically focused on what is underneath the conscious awareness, which is why sometimes you hear this message and something will be triggered within you, something that you perhaps didn't pay attention to, but whatever was said through this transmission triggers something and all of a sudden allows you to see something that was there, but you were not able to see it. And that something has the potential to make you or break you. And by realizing that that something is there, you can choose to work with it in a way that allows you to experience more of yourself. I hope this is making sense. In other words, I'm going to say it more plainly. My job is to help you enjoy your life's experience to the fullest. When we live in fear, we cannot possibly enjoy life to the fullest because we are in fear. Fear will limit us. So I'm hoping that this information is going to serve you in a way that will allow you to experience more of life for yourself in a way that you would like to see or experience life in less limited ways. So let us go through each pile. Each pile will have a certain message. I don't have a specific area that I'm asking questions about. And I just said, what does the universe need you to know? What would be important for you to realize about yourself in order so that you can move on towards being a greater aspect of yourself? If something doesn't make sense to you, just leave it. Maybe say, that's interesting. If something does make sense to you, listen to your body, because this is an energy transmission. So although you are hearing my words, there's a very definite energy that's going into your energetic field. In other words, your body will begin to remember these words. So without further ado, let's go through each pile and let's see what we have. All right, pile number 1. Let's see what potentially may be out of alignment with you. The first deck of cards I have is, I've used these before. Some of you have asked me to use these again, and they have no words, they have no symbology. I just basically tune in and extract messages. What I'm getting right away is that some of you might be experiencing discomfort or pain in your abdomen, okay? If that's the case for you, and that's very specific, it has to do with lack of nurture. Not physical nurture per se, although of course it could be that you are not supplying your body with adequate food and nutrition. But this is more regarding holding yourself back. So you are also a fairly analytical person, which tells me you might have some discomfort with feeling and digesting your emotions. Emotions, like food, need to be digested in order to move through our bodies. Okay? Just like food. Okay? Think of it this way: if we pile a whole bunch of food and it's not digested and it just sits there, it becomes very heavy and very uncomfortable. In the same way, when we are holding onto a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, which includes fear, okay? Fear is about your identity, for example, or how you look to the world. Those undigested emotions will sit there and they will, like I'm seeing, they're just turning, creating a lot of discomfort. You actually might be someone who frequently gets bloating. And again, I'm not saying this is some kind of a medical condition. If it is for you, that's something very different. This is more on an energetic level. So, pile number 1. How do you see yourself as far as your identity is concerned? Do you see yourself as powerful? Do you see yourself as discontent? Do you see yourself as someone who needs to protect him or herself? Do you see yourself as valuable or invaluable or not valuable? In other words, what does your truth tell you about you as far as your own identity and what you represent to the world? Because you are not seeing yourself clearly, I must say. And because of that, you will limit your experience and you will not allow yourself to take greater risks and greater chances for yourself, thus experiencing more expanded life, more of life. And you won't do it because you're afraid that you will not be accepted. Okay? So pile number 1, there is some resolution that's needed within you that has to do with acceptance, which is always tied to self-acceptance. Okay? When we fear not being accepted by the world, it is almost always rooted in the fact that we have rejected parts of ourselves. When we reject part of ourselves, that part of ourselves cannot get adequately nourished. And this work falls under the category for me of inner child work, shadow work, inner child work. In other words, if your inner child feels neglected on the inside, you have a tendency to neglect yourself emotionally, physically, spiritually, and otherwise, and mentally. You will not take as good care of yourself as you could, because you minimize yourself and you don't deem yourself as important. Listen, if you were not important, and I've said this before, you wouldn't exist. Okay? That's the bigger picture. If you were not important, you would not exist. I'm not talking about this ego. I am important. It's about how you feel. It's your truth, how you feel about yourself. If you have been neglected when you were a child, you might have arrived at an understanding that you hold no value or you hold little value, and therefore people are not taking care of you. You would have felt probably not loved. If you felt not loved, it would be equivalent to being malnourished. Okay, your inner child, pile number 1, is malnourished. Okay, you are too much in your critical mind. Critical mind is necessary and it's very important. If you don't have a critical mind, not a good idea. Too much in a critical mind is seeing the world with black and white. Also, the word criticism is coming up. Are you, pile number 1, someone who tends to criticize yourself and outside criticism really takes you down? Okay? Here's the statement I want to say. People will criticize you like it or not. That's a given. I can guarantee you that. People will criticize you like it or not. It's a given. The question is this. What do you do with the criticism? What do you do with the criticism? Do you just receive it and put it in yourself and say, okay, what they're saying is truth? Or do you ever wonder, do you ever go like, okay, so there's a criticism. Is it true for me? Is it real? Is there something to it? Probably not. Someone who deals with low self-esteem will take criticism very harshly, okay, because they don't think about themselves very much, and every little bit of criticism is going to make them feel even more inferior. So pile number 1, there are some decisions that you want to make or need to make in terms of how you choose to see yourself going forward. Here's why. The world, the universe, God, source wants what's best for you. It also wants you to have and experience more. But you have to have it for yourself. You have to want it for yourself too. Now, if you only want it without putting adequate effort towards experiencing it, all you're going to be doing is you're just going to be wanting and wanting and wanting and wanting. So right now, I could say this. Look at your wants. Look at your desires. And ask yourself this question. What is it that I need to shift within myself to receive that and make it be part of my reality? What is required of me to experience that which I want? Which also says, how are you standing in your way? Okay? I'll tell you how you're standing in your way. You think of yourself as too small, inadequate, not valuable enough, not good enough, the standard things that we humans go through. But you are wanting to elevate to superhuman. You want to experience a higher version of your humanness. You now have the opportunity, especially with the full moon that we just had, you have the opportunity to release yourself from your internal shackles in order so that you can free yourself and move forward in a much more abundant and expanded way. So you're standing at a choice point. Do you or don't you? That's up to you. The magic word here is choose. If you choose to do nothing about what you want, then nothing is going to happen. It is the power of choosing that you have no idea. You can't even imagine how the power of choosing is so important. When you choose, you say, I will, I am. when you don't choose, you hold yourself back. Okay? What you choose and how you choose it and how you choose to go about it, that is up to you. Choosing to do something about it, whatever it is and however it comes to you, this is what you want to think about at this time. Because your own frequency is rising, you will naturally start to attract to yourself different experiences. But if you are in a position of attracting different experiences for yourself, let's use the analogy of a lot more money. If you are practicing experiencing a lot more abundance, and this has been a struggle for you, which probably has a lot to do with your self-worth, then you must realize what is out of alignment. Okay? Out of alignment will be attached to your fear. In other words, what are your fears about not having abundance, or what are your fears about abundance? Perhaps to you, the idea is that abundance isn't real. Some people believe it's not real for them. For my neighbor, it's okay, but for me, it's not okay. And if that's the story that's running in the background, well, then that will be your experience. And you'll be putting a lot of effort to trying to experience more abundance. Meanwhile, that part of you that's afraid says, no, we can't. That's not real. Okay? Always remember this. What you claim as real, has to come to you. In a different package, perhaps, but it has to come to you. This is what they're telling me to say. This is how powerful choosing an intention is. Okay? I'm going to leave it at that. But you guys are very analytical. Breathe. Number 29. I just want to say the words follow your breath. I don't know exactly what that means. Perhaps it's a message for you. But this is showing up in a very interesting, just the way it's shown to me. This woman, I believe she's a woman, okay, has wings, and she represents a being that is full on trusting. Her eyes are closed and in a position of receiving. In order for you to experience more of what you want, you have to embody this person. You have to become that person. You have to become that person that trusts that she will receive. If you're not that person right now, then that simply means that there are some restrictions or fears standing in the way, or limitations. Those are the ones you want to face. They're also saying nothing happens for no reason. You learn from everything. Now, whether you are conscious of what you learn or it's an unconscious learning, your soul is always learning, that gets to be decided by each and every individual. Right now, you are being encouraged to practice conscious awareness, to be consciously aware of who you are, how you use your energy, how you use your mind, how much your mind is, how your mind is powerful. You're being urged to be in that awareness. Why? Because it is within this awareness that you have your power. Your power is in this awareness. Okay? That's all I'm going to say on that. Openness. Beautiful. Take care of yourself. Take care of your needs, but be open. You are now, some of you, on a receiving end of some situation. And in other words, you are in a receiving end, on a receiving end. And for some of you, this is going to feel slightly uncomfortable. So pile number 3, you have some challenges apparently with regards to receiving. If you are in a position of receiving right now, and you're being given to, you're being taken care of, not just casually, but you feel like you're being taken care of, and if you experience some level of discomfort, what this is saying to me is that you are not used to being on the receiving end. Okay, the question is why? Why were you not used to being in the receiving end? Well, if you're not in a receiving end, then that means if you're not receiving, you must be closed. Many of you, pile number 1, your door has been quote unquote closed to the receiving. And right now, this doorway is opening. And this is like a surge of energy. I don't know how else to say it. It was like a surge of energy where you frequency-wise become more expanded. And that naturally puts you in a space of more receiving. Because you're vibing more in a space of love. Love, openness, same idea, right? And I feel like that's all I want to say. It's in the aspect of receiving that you, pile 1, might have some challenges or problems. So if you have resistance to receiving, if you have resistance to asking for help, if you have resistance to being close to somebody, if you resist being emotionally open, if you're feeling resistance to being emotionally open, you want to ask yourself the question why. Where is this resistance come from? Because this resistance comes from some sort of story that still has a hold on you in a limiting way. You want to shift that limitation into something that is less limiting for you. That's how I want to say it. A lot of it has to do with receiving money for many of you. Probably many of you are shifting jobs, changing careers. This is the time we are in. The world is shaking up. And many people are realizing that life is too short to do what you're told to do when it doesn't bring you some level of satisfaction and happiness. Life is too short. They're saying to me, you know, when we're going to be on our deathbeds and somebody's going to ask us the question, you know, what would you have done? What more would you have done in your life? I doubt anybody is going to say, I wish I worked more. Probably, I wish I enjoyed life more. So for you, pile number 1, to find satisfaction, more enjoyment, you want to look at how you hold yourself back, your levels of insecurity you have about your insecurities, and then face those insecurities because they are rooted in fear, and challenge those insecurities, challenge that fear. Is that fear still true for you? Do you want to hold on to this fear? And I'll tell you right now, you don't. Nobody does. Okay? I'm also being asked to say that you are safe in this process. Many people have said to me that facing fears, they run away from it. They don't want to do it because facing fear doesn't feel great. But it doesn't mean it can't be faced in a way that allows you to feel in charge and in control rather than the fear getting a hold of you. There are ways of dealing with your fears, and it's a process. I go through this with my clients all the time. So you are safe as you are facing your fears, but it might feel a little bit uncomfortable. Don't let the discomfort sway you from doing what you want, okay? Because if the discomfort of looking at your fear is greater than the discomfort if the discomfort, back up. If the discomfort of facing your fear is greater than the discomfort of what's on the other side of fear, then it's like you're going to continually be living in fear. I don't know if that makes sense to me. My mind is doing swirls right now. Let me see if there's anything else. Also remember this. Fear is always there to protect you. Once you understand what fear is trying to protect you from, once you understand that story, you can begin to shift that story. But you will never understand the story unless you understand the story. And in order for you to understand the story, you have to go on the inside. Okay? It's very powerful work, and I would encourage every human being to do that. But I want to say most people don't do that because it's, well, it's challenging work. But pile number one, you're being encouraged to face your fears so that you can become an elevated human being with a far greater life experience. So that's what I have for you, pile number one. All right, pile number two, let's see what might be out of alignment for you. So look at this image. And what I'm hearing is coming out of hiding. You, pile number two, have been in a habit of hiding a lot. Why do we hide? Simple. We don't want to be seen. The question is why? Pile number two, why don't you want to be seen, or why are you afraid perhaps of being seen? What do you believe is going to happen if you are to be seen? Because you do want to be acknowledged. Everyone does. But in order to be acknowledged, you have to show yourself. You have to be there. If people can't see you, it's hard for them to acknowledge you. I don't know who I'm saying this for, but the idea of acknowledgement is really big. Okay? Release your need for being needed. Okay? So you apparently also have, some of you, a very deep desire of being needed. But this is not, this kind of being needed is stemming out of fear, because it is absolutely beautiful to feel needed. It's like, it's beautiful. However, if you rely on being needed, then what you are saying is, unless I am needed, something is going to happen, and it's usually something no good. Okay? Perhaps you're afraid of rejection. We all are. But even if you are afraid of rejection, don't let the fear of rejection choose how you live your life. Because then you will always live in fear of rejection. Pile number two, it will be really for you to look deep into your own stories and see if you can find anything related to fear of being rejected, fear of not being enough. And again, it's a prevalent thing amongst humans, but this is for you, pile number two. This is what you need to hear, apparently. Okay? Are you afraid, perhaps, that if you are not needed, people are going to leave you, which is rejection? And I believe that's probably, for those of you who resonate with this message, that's probably, I forgot the train of thought. Oh, just left me. Fear of being needed. If you have some fears around being needed because you believe that unless you are needed, people are going to leave you, there's a story there that you might want to face and shift, because it limits you. Unfortunately, it limits you. Not only that, you will absolutely have a tendency towards magnetizing needy people to yourself, often in situations when they're going to drain you. And you will have a tendency to assume responsibility for their choices and actions, which means you take on responsibility that isn't even yours. Usually not a great thing to do, because you rob others of their responsibility. Okay, so I'm saying this to someone. Okay, This doesn't say that you're not a responsible person. This almost says that you're too responsible for other people and their actions, and you hold yourself responsible for their choices and for their actions. Perhaps there's also some guilt. Okay? Perhaps guilt was impressed upon you when you were growing up. Perhaps you got the message, if you don't do this, I'm not going to love you, or something to that effect. And you carry a scar from this. Likely, first I'm getting the word mother, so it's a mother figure, or someone who was in authority position when you were young, and I want to say under the age of 5, or somewhere around the age of 5. Okay? You have a lot of strengths, but you have learned to, for some of you, give up on yourself. What does that mean? When you give up on yourself, you deem yourself as unimportant. But you will deem others more important than you. And what will end up happening, that's not to say that people aren't important in our lives, no, but you are the most important thing in your life, let's face it. Without you, there wouldn't be your life, and there wouldn't be you helping other people. So you are absolutely number one. If you don't see yourself as number one in terms of needing to take care of, you're going to feel neglected. So I suspect many of you, pile number 2, feel some level of emotional neglect. They're showing me that somehow pile number 1 is also going to be relevant to you. I don't know how, but if you feel like you want to watch pile number 1, there's an additional information there for you. Okay. So self-neglect, pile number 2, seems to be a theme for you. What does that look like? For one, when you emotionally neglect yourself, it's equivalent to not feeding your inner child. Okay, so your inner child will be malnourished. Okay, that's pile number 1, talked about that. Okay, when you neglect yourself, you don't deem yourself important. You don't take care of yourself as best as you could. And you have a tendency to running on empty. Why? Because you don't take care of yourself. You don't fill your tank. Pile number 2, it's beautiful that you give freely. But if you give to the point where you've given yourself away and there is nothing left for you, then doesn't matter how much giving you will be giving, you're going to feel empty because you are not allowing yourself to receive. Okay? So there's also an issue with receiving here. None of this is criticism, by the way. It's just stating something that's likely going on with you. Perhaps it's a layer that you haven't thought about yet. They're also asking me to say guilt. You are holding on to some guilt, and it's an ancestral guilt. It's almost like if I could have had prevented something, nothing bad would happen. So there is likely an ancestral link to some situations down a long time ago, where someone felt guilt because something happened and they blamed themselves for not doing more. Do you blame yourself for not doing more? Did someone blame you for not doing more? There's a story there. There's a story there. Card number 2, TikTok, but it's in reverse. Okay. What I want to say is you're holding on to time, but of course we can't hold on to time. Like, time is just an idea. It doesn't really exist. So what does it mean you're holding on to time? You are trying to create new future by looking into your past. So what you are doing is you are taking cues from your past in order to create your future. Now, that's all good and wonderful if what you are referring to in the past is beautiful and powerful and wonderful. But if your frame of reference to your past is one of limiting nature, then you using that in order to create your future, what you're doing is you are creating from a limited space. You are limiting your future, and you don't want to do that. So this is about letting go of your past, pile number 2. Everything is, there's no past, it's now. So even when I say it's letting go of the past, there's no past, it's letting go of what is within you now, today, in this moment. And by doing so, we effectively release, quote unquote, past that has a hold on us, especially the type of past that has that is of limiting nature. Okay, it's time for you, pile number 2, to let go of needs and wants of other people. What does that mean? I'm not saying you shouldn't want something for somebody, but if you want for somebody more than they want for themselves, then you are going to find yourself doing all the hard work, but the person is not going to reap the benefits, because that's not how it works. You can't do something for somebody if they want a different effect. You're not responsible for their effect. They are. You can help them, you can coach them, you can guide them, but you can't do it for them. I don't know who this is for, but this is a really, really important message. Perhaps you are in a position where somebody's asking you for guidance, but you're giving them guidance, but they're not following your guidance. And because they're not following your guidance, they get themselves into shit. And then they blame you, and then you blame yourself. And all I'm going to say to you is this: well, how is that possible? How are you blaming yourself for the other person's actions or inactions? That makes no sense. But apparently that's what you do, pile number 2. You hold yourself responsible for other people's actions or inactions. And that's a very difficult hole to get out of. Very difficult. Again, it's not about not wanting something good for somebody, but they must want it as much as you want it for them. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay? Last but not least, sustenance. What makes you happy, pile number 2? What makes you, like, if you were to see a version of yourself that's just like happy, what would you be doing? Can you imagine yourself being taken care of? Not because you're doing something for somebody, but simply because you are. Can you imagine yourself being given to without conditions? Can you imagine yourself accepting without conditions? Can you see yourself without your limiting conditioning? Can you see yourself without your limitations, without your perceived limitations? If so, what does that look like? What do you look like to you without your limitations? Have that vision in your mind. Allow your unconscious mind to show you a version of you that is without conditions, and see what you get. And then ask that version of you some pretty important questions. First of all, ask him or her or it what you need in order to feel the same way that that version is feeling. What is it required of you? Chances are you're going to get an answer. These are very powerful exercises to do, especially when you're in a meditative state. Okay? So a little bit of meditation would be very helpful before you do this visual. Ask the less conditioned version of you to share with you what is required of you to feel less conditioned, to live a life that is less conditional. I'm not saying get rid of all your conditioning, because some of it is good. Like, some of it is good. I'm talking about the type of conditioning that limits you, okay? Who are you, pile number 2, without your limiting conditioning? Who are you? And can you see, can you imagine, can you envision yourself as that? Can you envision yourself as someone without your negative limiting conditioning? And just notice what you get. Okay? It might be hard for you to imagine that. Why? Because your conditioning, your limiting conditioning is all you know. And you may not even know what that feels or looks like. Imagine. Create it in your mind. Here's the reason for this exercise. The more you can tap into that version of you, the more you will be magnetizing yourself to having that experience. But things will come up that will show you how you're standing in your own way. But that's the whole thing. You're here to face what is holding you back. You are here to face your perceived limitations. Perceived limitations. You're here to reorganize your human thinking so that your thinking can become more consciously driven, so that you feel more in charge and more control of your life. Right? You have a mastermind. Every single human has a mastermind. I'm not sure about animals, but I'm just talking about humans, which means we could become masters at using our minds, but we can't do that if we don't understand how the mind works. Pile number 2, it would behoove you to understand how your specific mind works. Your mind with your specific unique stories, with your specific objections and limitations, so that you can understand how you create life from inside out. Because the outside is the reflection of your inner world. We all know that. Okay? Do you want to feel like this, Ganesha? Sustenance, happy, content, plenty, abundant. Do you want to feel that way? Is that how you want to feel? Then you have to look at your conditioning, because some conditioning in your own mind are not allowing you to have this experience. And this is what I want for you. This is what we all want for you. To be less encumbered rather than more encumbered. It's for you to feel and be more unencumbered, more free, more yourself, more limited, more open. Life has a lot to give to you, but you have to be open to it. Your level of openness to what life wants to give you will be relative to how much fear you are holding on to. The more fear you are holding on to will be relative to how open you are to receiving. Okay? You're not going to be open to receiving if you believe on some level that you hold no value. You're not going to be open to receiving because you're going to believe that people perceive you as someone who has no value. And perhaps that's why you do what you do. You do things for other people. You want people to need you because that tells you or tells them in your mind that they find you valuable. You're not valuable because of what you do. You're valuable because you are. You hold value, incredible value, just because you are. No conditions. Can you see yourself that way, pile number 2? Can you see yourself as someone with a lot of value just because? Not because of what you do or what you stand for, just because? Can you imagine that for yourself? Try it and see how it feels. It's an interesting feeling we're not used to. We're not used to that kind of feeling. We're not used to unconditional receiving, unconditional love. We think we are, but no, we're not. No. So that's what I have for you, pile number 2. All right, let's see what we have for you, pile number 3, and what's potentially out of alignment for you. Oh, this is a beautiful image. So just kind of tune in and see. What I'm hearing is we're one and the same. Do you feel different than other people? Do you feel like you don't belong? Do you feel you're not from here? Do you feel like, what the hell am I here for? And that will create a certain sense of loneliness or aloneness or alienness. Pile number 3, you are likely not from this planet. Well, my understanding is that we are not from this planet. We are visiting our planet. But what I'm saying to you is that likelihood is that you are not from, you come from a different galaxy, is what I want to say, okay? With a very strong and very high vibration that can come across as very sharp, okay? And you chose this physical body in order to understand human emotions and human behavior. So you are pile number 3, for those that you resonate with. You are here to observe human emotions and human behaviors. You are here to be in a physical body in order to study human behavior and how behavior is affected by what we feel and what we believe. You are here, I want to say, you're born to study. Incidentally, I feel this way. I haven't always conceptualized it that way, but it's become to me very clear over the last few years that, and it's been told to me that I'm here to understand human emotion, human behavior, which is why I do what I do. And it's sometimes difficult for me to be in an experience because I'm always observing. And when I am not in the experience, I'm not being fully human. However, when I am being fully human, I feel slightly uncomfortable. Actually, interesting that I'm saying this. I never thought about it that way. You, pile number 3, likely feel some discomfort in being a human. It's almost like you literally feel like you're an alien. So you probably are, if you can call yourself that way. You are from a different star system, from a different galaxy. I'm getting the word Andromeda. Serious other beings. You are here from the stars. And it's a beautiful thing because you chose on a higher level to be here in order to help humanity transcend the mind, the ego mind. And in order for you to do that, you have to understand the ego mind. This is what my job is. I have to understand the ego mind. I have to understand the ego and all the various layers and what's made up of. So like I said, you're here to study. And oftentimes, this will manifest itself as you feeling like an outsider. Incidentally, I've always felt that way. Again, I wasn't conscious of this until now. That's interesting. Okay. When you feel like an outsider, you often feel like you don't belong. And it feels like a form of rejection. Okay. Pile 2 talked about rejection. I feel that for you, pile number 3, one of your biggest hiccups in this life is the fear of rejection. And because of that, you tend to hide. But you're here from the stars in order to bring your light forth. Not to hide your light, but to be the light that you are. Light is frequency. So the higher the frequency, the more light. We could use that analogy. Okay, so you are someone who is likely a higher vibrating being. But I don't want you to misunderstand like, oh, you're better, you're higher than everybody else. No, it's that's an ego thing. No, you're different. You're different. You've known about that. You've known about that, about yourself. You frequently hear people say, wow, you're different. And you're like, well, I'm just me. Although likelihood is that you have always felt different. Here's what I'm here to tell you. Although you feel different and you might appear as different, you're not alone. There are many, many, many souls out there to feel exactly the way you do. I, Joanna, am one of them. Guilty as charged. Okay? Here's what I want to say to you. Embrace your different. Embrace your uniqueness. Embrace your light. Embrace the you that you are with all your weirdness and all your quirks and all your different way of looking and doing things. Just be okay with being you. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine being okay with just being you and allowing the true you to just, here I am, world, with no fear of rejection, with no fear of ridicule, with no fear of being abandoned or being alone? Can you imagine living in that world? Well, yes, you can. And here's how. By fully, and I mean fully, accepting yourself. Why? Because by fully accepting yourself with all the things that you've got, you relax. You become a higher functioning human being because you're not holding yourself back. You're not rejecting yourself all over the place. You're not hiding. Pile number 2 talked about hiding. If you feel like you are hiding and you want to stop hiding, the first thing on the agenda, understand why you hide. Why do you hide? I talked at the very beginning that when I channel this information, I have consistently for years, I feel this resistance, and when I tune into it, it's a fear of being attacked for what I say. Some old story. Okay. What is your reason for holding back? What is your reason for holding back your different? Whatever is different. What is your reason for holding that? Whatever the different is that you bring, because you bring something different to the table. It's very obvious about you. I don't know who you are, but it's very obvious about you. When you speak, people tend to pay attention, or they go, I didn't know you knew that. It's a very interesting dynamic here. And I'm trying to figure out, why am I saying this? I think it's just to validate why you're here, to help you embody more of your uniqueness, to help you believe more in yourself even though you're different, and just to help you be. Imagine just being. Not trying to be, not supposed to be, not I have to be, just being. The greatest gift you can give to yourself, pile number 3, is to allow yourself to just be. What would it be like for you to just be without even trying? That's a really interesting question for you, pile number 1. So yes, you are different, you are unique. Some may call you weird. I say, you know what? Own that shit. Own your weirdness. Be proud of your weirdness. Be mindful how you use your weirdness. You know, read the room. but darn it, own it. Because if your weirdness is part of you, it's part of who you are. It's part of the beautiful package you come in. Otherwise, everybody would be the same. What fun would be in that? We wouldn't have fun experiences. We would just be walking clones. We want flavor. You are part of the flavor of humanity's construct. That's a beautiful message. Never-ending story. So what this is telling me is that you are in the process of overcoming your own rejection fears. You're not quite out of it yet, but you're in a process of overcoming it. Perhaps you are realizing that your own rejection fears are stopping you, for example, from channeling. Okay, it could be anything. Perhaps you realize that your happiness is your responsibility, and when you don't allow yourself to be happy, then you are effectively responsible for your unhappiness. The moment you realize that you are in charge of your unhappiness, you can change it because you're in charge. You're in charge. But if you don't know that you're in charge, you're not going to change that. Letting go of persistent old stories that tell you that your uniqueness is bad. There's something in you that you either were told is bad, is not acceptable, it's not, somehow it's, you have this thing that you brought with you, but somehow it's been like beaten out of you. Perhaps you were told that what you have to say is not important, so you learn to shut your mouth. Again, and I spoke of this in pile number 1, I believe. If you were not important, if you didn't have important message, whether in everyday life or out into the world, there would be no reason for you to be here. End of story. By the way, Never-Ending Story is the title of this card. It's time, pile number 3, to own your shit. And I mean this in 2 ways. To actually own your shit. Okay? Be responsible for your own stuff. And to just own it. Just own your stuff. Own your stuff. Own being you. You are a powerful being. Everybody is. Not just because you're from a different galaxy. However, you do contain within you, I'm going to use this terminology, a little bit more power, or I don't want to say it that way because everybody has power. You bring with you a higher vibration, okay? So you naturally draw attention to you, okay? Sometimes it's an attention you don't want. I had attention when I was younger I didn't want, and it was not welcome, and it scarred me, and I have a lot of scars because of that, okay? So although you're coming into this world with a specific type of frequency, and that automatically is like a draw, it's like magnetizer. Likely you have experienced situations in your life where you got the wrong attention, and that perhaps, helped you shut yourself down. If that's the case, there's a story attached to it, right? And this story is fear-based, and you want to release that because you, pile number 3, and I want to say this and I want to yell it. You're here to glow. You're here to glow. You're here to be all that you can be. And when you are all that you can be, when you are just being, you're freaking glowing. Now, as with glow, it's attractive. People get attracted to glow. There's an opportunity here for you, pile number 3, to remember your boundaries. Okay? Because people may want attention from you, but it may not be what you want. And it's really important for you to draw boundaries. Not wall, but boundaries. So pile number 3, boundaries are indicated for you. Last but not least, most definitely something is being revealed to you. Okay? Changes and new beginnings. You are looking at things from a different perspective. You are seeing yourself in new light. And when you see yourself in new light, you can help others see themselves in new light. So you're here to observe, you're here to learn from this experience, you're here to share your learning, and you're here to bring awareness, certain level of awareness into this new world, new level of awareness. Once you have awareness of something, you can never go back. You can deny it, you can pretend it, but you can never go back. The type of revealing that's happening for you over the next few weeks to few months is it's like a revelation. It's like you reveal yourself in the process. You come out of hiding. You experience releasing powerlessness in order to embody more of your power. I hope that's making sense. It's a very, very strong message for you, pile number 3, the whole thing with being different and attention and all that kind of stuff. Don't be afraid of attention. Don't rely on attention, but don't be afraid of it. Attention is just people paying attention. And if you're here to spread the word, if I can use that analogy, the more people have access to this information, the better, because you have something important to say. Let it be known that you are an individual, although you are part of the whole. I believe we all know that, but for some reason you needed to hear this. You're an individual, but you're part of the whole. You're here to educate humanity that we are all in this together, one by one. When you heal yourself and reveal yourself to the world, and when each person does the same, our humanity will change. Humanity's consciousness will change. You are here to help shape humanity's consciousness in a new way. You cannot do that from a hiding place. Not going to happen. Okay? Proclaim your independence and show up as best you can, and just allow yourself to be. You have a lot to say, pile number 3. You have a lot to say. I can feel that you can be like, oh, I don't want to, but there's a lot. You've come here to do some work, big work, important work. We all are. I'm not saying, oh, you're better than everybody else. No, because I actually don't like doing that. I always want to keep the ego in check. No, but you're here to do big things, and I believe that if this resonates with you, I think you know that. You know that already. You may not know exactly what it is. You may not exactly know what the purpose is, but somewhere deep inside of you, you know that you are here to do something big. The biggest thing you can do for this world, to help this world, is to reveal your true self, your divinity, so that you can shine. And when others ask you, hey, how do I shine? You share them the how. And then they decide to do something about it or not do something about it. So your responsibility isn't on what people do with the information you give them. Your responsibility is to this information and sharing this information. That's all you're responsible for, is the information that you share. Okay? And you have apparently a lot to share. So that's what I have for you, pile number 3. I hope this was helpful. Please do let me know in comments how this is reverberating with you. If it isn't, then leave it. It might come at you a few weeks later and you'll be like, oh my gosh, now I know what she means. Thank you again so much for being here. Again, I look towards your comments. Thank you so much for every one of you who are supporting me in many different ways. Kelly, thank you. I got your message. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.